Hey guys, Tony Blauer here. Uh, I was going to say I've got a special guest today, but all my guests are special. No offense, Marcus. Um, but I do have kind of a really interesting guest. You're up there with a couple of my guests that. Well, first of all, welcome to the show, Marcus Aurelius Anderson.
Thank you for having me.
So I've had a couple of guests on the show that were ambushed in fights. One of them shot 14 times, another one shot in the face, and fought their way through the stuff where it could have easily gone this way and they'd have died and they wouldn't be here. You've got an interesting thing where you had a huge accident in the military, and then, as I understand it, died while they were trying to save you, and then revived. So you're kind of like in this rare category of people who maybe should have died but didn't, and that always changes your perspective immediately after, like being in a car accident where the seatbelt saved you, and minutes before you went, I'm not wearing a seatbelt, and then you said, I'll put it on today, and then something happens and you go, you know what, this is going to change how I drive and how I talk about driving. Tell us a little bit about that. You don't have to get into, I'm sure you've been asked about this like 100 times on all the podcasts you've been interviewed on. So it's not so much, what I'm more interested in is maybe you could do a Reader's Digest about like the event and then what happened. But what I'm really more in, my fascination is studying fear, but not, fight or flight and sympathetic Paris. It's give me something that can create traction in my life, something that I can listen to and go, oh, fuck, I'm going to learn from this person's experience. I'm going to incorporate that. So how did it change you? That's where I want you to get to. And what are some simple ideas or thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you so much. This has been a long time coming. Thank you for being on my podcast as well. So for me, I joined the military at 38 because I had always had an excuse not to join.
Okay.
But when my great uncle passed, he was in Vietnam Special Forces, long range reconnaissance. And that was my catalyst to decide if I was going to try to join, this is the time to try. To put it quickly, got an age waiver, got into infantry school, got through, got stationed at Fort Drum at 10th Mountain, upstate New York, in 2011. And then in 2012, we were preparing to deploy, and I suffered an injury. The disc in my neck ruptured entirely. So it compressed my spinal cord and left me paralyzed from the neck down. At that point, I'm almost 40. So they rushed me to the hospital. Just like everything else, you're in a gurney, they're running you through. They have an entire army with you. They're poking and prodding you. They're shining lights in your eyes. Give me the MRI, come out. They say, we're going to prep you for surgery. I'm still trying to just put my head around the fact that I can't move, let alone the fact that they're going to operate on me. And it happens so fast, just like anything. It happens so fast, you don't have a chance to stop it. Get under the anesthesia, count from 100 down. I get to 98. Do flat line. The whole time I'm gone, I feel this very cold sensation, and it's very dark, very quiet, very peaceful, but very alone and very, very cold.
This is when you flatlined?
Yeah.
And so was that like a reaction to the anesthesia or something? Do we know what caused that?
What happened was, because the disc in my neck, it was up at C5, and all that debris that was in my spinal column, they were trying to get it out. And when they would go up close to my medulla, it would make me crash, because that's what controls your breathing, controls your respiration.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it was during the operation that this started to happen. Okay.
Yeah, during the operation. And I wake up in the ICU still confused. And what little movement I did have is arrested, because I'm in a neck brace now, so I can't even move what little I was able to before, still paralyzed. Doctor comes in and he's like, hey, we lost you. I didn't know what he meant. And he explained to me what he meant. And he had a very congratulatory tone. And he says, the good news is you get to live to tell the tale. He says, but unfortunately, this is what you're left with.
Wow.
And, you're just in denial. As a soldier, right? We have this mentality of like even when they're wheeling me into the surgery, I still had this idea that maybe they can just give me a shot because I've got like I had a team at that point. So I'm like, because my guys are counting on me, we're getting ready to deploy, we're going to Afghanistan, I have to be ready. And they were like, "You're not going anywhere. You know, you're not doing anything. You're going to be lucky to survive this."
Wow.
So that was and the doctor, he says, like, listen, it would be irresponsible for me to give you hope. He says, if you were going to walk, it would be happening right now. He said, but there's so much damage to your spinal cord that you're going to have like nerve damage for the rest of your life. And this is kind of what you're left with. And he said, so just rest and try to recover and let's see what you can do. And again, as a soldier, so for me, I went back into that place of, well, if I went from being able to do all this superhuman kind of crazy stuff and I was able to overcome death, in my mind, I should be able to walk again. But after about a week at the ICU and then taking me back to my unit, that's when I realized this wasn't something that I could just put my fingers in my ears and la, 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 act like it didn't happen.
Right.
And that's when I turned 40 years old in that bed. My birthday, broke, divorced, bedridden, paralyzed. And
that's it.
It makes it changed.
Just broke, bedridden, divorced, paralyzed.
That was it. I mean, I should have just been able to walk it off at that point, but
is that the source of that big smile on your face?
The fact that I was able to change it was the big source of the smile.
Well, this is a great time to, I was going to ask you, tongue in cheek, how'd you come up with the name of your book and your TEDx talk? And that's, for those of you who don't know, it's The Gift of Adversity. And that's a fantastic, I mean, I got goosebumps now just saying the title, because knowing a little bit about that story, you should have been one of the guys that, you're just living under a bridge or you killed yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And, I've had some horrific things happen to me, my family, where I know that other people just would have left their wife and their kids and went, fuck this, I'm out of here. Or, done something worse to themselves and just said, I can't take it, the pressure. But like my story is kind of fucking like lame compared to your story, man. And it's all relative. I tell people, like, when you break your pinky toe, and you're going, oh, fuck, it hurts. Like, and someone goes, well, it's just your pinky. You're okay. Like, oh, it'll heal by itself. It's like the pain for you is 10 at that moment. Right. And everybody, regardless of what's going on, whether, you could be playing a video game or you could be in the hospital, it's all denial first. No, I just, the big boss, I'm dead. No, it's a fucking game. Shut up. Yours wasn't a video game. So it's fascinating. And, I'd read about this, but I've never talked to you about this. So it's definitely more visceral hearing it from you. And that's kind of cool. How long did it take? You obviously, a week later, you're lying there. You had to go into what doctors would say a clinical depression. You had to go into, and I want to get to, I don't want this podcast to be where like everyone's like, crying and moping around after. I want to get to the gift of adversity and what the message is as quickly as possible. But I think sometimes in our world of influencers and social media wizards and, people standing on their yacht with semi-clad, women behind them saying, buy my never fear adversity again. And I think it's important that I talk about this in our courses where I remind people that the goal appears to us in a keynote, in a TED talk, as the bullet on a keynote or a PowerPoint. And the goal is like, get to here, be happy, be wealthy, be grateful, whatever it is. But that's just the subject. Under that is the substance. And so you can't speak viscerally or write a book that has anything tangible or meaningful to it if you didn't go through the shit. And that's the difference that I want to point out for everyone listening here is that, there's a lot of people out there that are selling stuff that have never, like they've never built a business. They've never truly been like rock bottom and then built it out. So we need to be careful what's out there. So I'm really interested in that period. Again, I'm not trying to edit or censor. I want to get to the most important stuff. But this period where you realize, you know what, I got no money. My wife left me. I'm paralyzed. Okay, I want to kill myself, but I can't.
Exactly.
And then pick it up from there.
Yeah, and that's the perfect point, because depression is the bare minimum there. I'm literally trying, like, I wanted nothing more in my life than to die.
Right.
And I can't even figure out how to do that. Like, I was literally wondering if there was a mechanism, and the only thing I could think of was to ask somebody to do it for me.
Right.
And even then I was trying to figure out, how do I pitch that to somebody?
Right.
And I know that I can't do that. So now I'm forced to do nothing else other than to just wallow and sit in this. And you and I, I've done martial arts since I was, a kid. And I've always loved the Stoicism and the Taoism and the Zen and these ideas, because they make you think kind of outside the box and laterally. But man, when you're in that fucking bed and that's your life, and it's no bullshit, and it's really hitting you, and you have this like stuff kind of come into your head, it just sounds like a bunch of flowery bullshit.
Yep.
It's like, you're trying to tell me if it's endurable to endure it, or that there is, opportunity within this hardship. I don't fucking see it. What is it? What can it possibly be?
Right.
And of course I'm miserable, but I'm also making the people around me miserable, right? Because if you're coming in and you're trying to take care of me, I'm not being very nice because I'm pissed off, and I'm projecting that anger. So that anger that is directed inwards is the very definition of depression. And that's where I'm at. So I eventually got to the point where I was just like, because they'd just lean me up, turn on Netflix, give me meds, and then, because that's all they can do for you, right? And it's not their fault. So for me, I was just like, don't even turn on the TV, just leave the lights off, just let me try to figure this out. And see, for us as humans, right? Our natural tendency is, when we face something difficult, some sort of hardship or adversity, we want to put as much distance between us and that as we can. We just want to get away from it. Like if you're a kid and you hit a hot stove, you run away from it. But if we're strong enough to stay there close to it while the wound is still fresh, we can learn so much. But most of us will never do that voluntarily. So for me, I say in the book and in the TEDx talk, the beauty of adversity is it doesn't offer you any other choice. And when there's no other choice, the choice is simple. So my choice was, I had to choose to embrace this thing and say, okay, and just like with martial arts, right? If I have a big, strong guy and he's pushing directly up against me and we're on the same plane, he's always going to win because he's bigger and he's stronger. He has the advantage. He has leverage. But if I can turn just a little bit, or if I can use that flinch reflex like you talk about to weaponize, to get that beginning, to get that opening, now I have a chance. Maybe I can redirect him. Maybe I can actually break contact. Maybe I can actually re-attack before they even realize what's going on. So for me, I was pushing against this adversity for months, 3 months, and nothing was happening. And I was like, well, this is the definition of insanity. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just lean into this thing and go with it. I mean, because nothing else is working. And while that sounds counterintuitive to people that may be listening, if you're in that position and you've been like that for months, you will literally think or try anything,
right,
to try to get out of the situation that you're in. And so for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to just lean into this thing.
Let me interrupt you. During that 3 months, did you have any sensation returning anywhere? Any like little glimmer of hope going, oh fuck, my toe just moved?
No, I didn't have anything, and I was trying everything I could.
Okay.
So for me, what I did was, I was like, okay, this is pushing me this direction. I'm going to go with it. And so I thought, okay, people always say, like, because I was full of anger and hate. So for most people, the opposite of hate and anger is love. But frankly, I didn't have any of that really around me, right? So I had to do the next best thing for me, which was to be grateful. And I know that sounds like everybody's talking about that and it's woo-woo and everybody talks about it in their little gratitude journals. But most people that are using gratitude now are half-assing it at best. And they're bullshitting themselves, right? They like to be grateful for the stuff that they're happy about. They like to be grateful for, the house and their family being healthy and them having money and the holidays, right? But that's when it's easy to be grateful. Can you be grateful when the shit hits the fan? Can you find something to be grateful for if somebody gets hurt, if something happens, if you lose your business? That's when you need gratitude the most, and people don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So in this life, you cannot just go through and cherry pick the things that you like and be grateful only for those things. Because if that's the case, it's like unconditional love, right? If you love your wife unconditionally, and she may make you mad once in a while, but you still love her.
More frequently than that.
More frequently than that.
That's another show. Go on.
Yeah, that's a different show. We'll get into that. We'll both open up another podcast for that stuff. Right. But the idea was to understand that even with gratitude, it's the same thing. It has to be unconditional. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It's tough because for me, it made me regret everything that I'd ever, I realized how much I fucked around in my life whenever I had everything taken away from me. They say you don't know what you got till it's gone, but that's not true. We know what we've got. We just assume that we will always have it.
Nice.
And when that's taken from you, it changes everything. Your perspective changes. You think about all the times you had wasted watching TV or saying that you'll do it tomorrow or, taking advantage of something at that time because you assume that you'll always have more time. For me, what I did was I started thinking, okay, did anybody, obviously my life sucks right now, but did anybody benefit from me being injured? And I thought, well, actually, if I'd have been deployed, because we were supposed to be in Afghanistan at that point and they pushed our deployment back. So almost like you were talking about with the seatbelt earlier, it's the same thing. I believe that I would have faced this injury no matter where I was on the planet, right? Whether it been in Afghanistan mountains or in the US. And for every one man that is injured, it takes two men to pull him to safety. So that means my team would have been compromised in the line of fire. That means another team would have had to cover down. That means another platoon would have had to cover down. That means a Chinook would have had to fly into a hot zone to come get me. And when I did that, it was like, wow, there are, probably 30 or 40 other people whose lives would have been put in harm's way had I suffered this overseas. And for the first time in my life, I think I had this genuine 360 unconditional gratitude where I was just like, man, I'm lucky. Not that I'm lucky, but I'm grateful that nobody else was injured in the process of me being hurt.
So that's a super, super metaphysical, deep perspective that anyone listening to this can appreciate how, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to think of the right word and it's escaping right now, but it's like very altruistic. Like, wow, let this happen to me and then the rest of you can go free. And people do, that's what heroes do. That's that manifesting courage moment. The guy that in the military sense, like dives on top of the hand grenade, knowing what's going to happen, but he's saving his buddies. An amazing leap in logic and faith, given that it happened during a training incident or preparation for deployment and you're in the hospital. But what I hear is that the abstraction part of your brain, I got A and I got C, and if I don't figure out B, I'm fucking going to stay here. Yeah. And it's almost like thinking about what Viktor Frankl wrote about in Man's Search for Meaning, right? The different, the gap between stimulus and response. And what are we doing with that refractory delay? So it was almost like, well, this happened to me. And if it was going to happen anyhow, it happened here, or it could have happened downrange. And then all these people that I fucking love and care about would have been possibly compromised too. And so the elegance of that new algorithm, new story, it started to change your state, changed you from like intense sympathetic, but when you're visualizing that, your parasympathetic turned back on.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I love that analogy. Like you said, we both love Frankl because just like you were mentioning, between the event, between the stimulus and that response, that's that gap where we have the ability to, because that event is, we decide what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So if we decide that that event is something negative, our decision makes us evoke emotion. So if I say that this event is negative, now I attach fear, I attach anger, I attach regret to that. And now what manifests from that are those emotions, those thoughts, and those thoughts eventually become actions in one way, shape, or form, right? But for me, I eventually looked at it. I was like, well, again, I'm looking at my adversity as a gift instead of a curse now. I'm flipping this thing on its head because I have no other choice. When I did that and I started saying, where's the opportunity in this? How am I going to do this? Now the emotion that my body is evoking turns into an opportunity. And I start finding where these things. So again, that was the only opportunity I could find. And for me, once I started having, and like I say, genuine gratitude, I started having genuine gratitude for the bed that I may never get out of. I started having gratitude for the window. I started having gratitude for the room that I may never leave. But once I had true unconditional gratitude for like a week or two, I started getting a little bit of feeling back in my left hand.
Interesting.
Now it
How
wasn't a
exciting was
lot.
that?
It was exciting, and I could do it about 5 times, and then it left.
Right.
So when the nurse would come in, I would try to show her, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Okay,"
Thanks,
pat you on the head,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But slowly but surely, and even that, like even if that's all I gotten, that was enough to give me some hope, right? And that's
I can relate in a small way. 2 years ago, I had a neck injury that impacted my trigeminal facial nerve,
oh
where
wow,
I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk without pinning the muscle in my face. I started getting numbing in my fingers.
yeah,
When it hit, they thought I was having a stroke, and I went to the hospital, had a CAT scan, and they said, no, you've got Bell's palsy. And it was triggered by there's two ways it can trigger it. One is a virus, they don't know much about it, and the other is a physical impact. So the doctor said to me, I'm sitting there just 5 minutes before they're going to wheel me out to the CAT scan. He says, have you ever been hit in the head? So I literally burst into laughing and said, well, like for 30 years, and I've had neck injuries since 1986, but in a small way, man, I can track this because, I couldn't close my eyes. I couldn't eat without drooling. I couldn't talk properly. And
yeah.
I'm a professional speaker, and I went into a major depression because it was almost like my whole identity was taken from me. I couldn't teach anymore. And I couldn't move. I couldn't work out. And, but it's exactly, and I'm only saying this not to derail your talk, but to explain to people listening that I was so fucking angry that this had happened, and it had happened with somebody working on my neck who moved it too far, and not knowing that there was a pre-existing injury there, took it too far, and it just crushed the nerve and killed the nerve. And but it took about, they said, that when this happens, it usually heals itself within 3 to 4 months. And if it doesn't in that time, you probably got it. And 3 to 4 months went, and I was as bad as ever. And so I went through these cycles, this roller coaster road, just like you, where, I wasn't paralyzed on a bed, but part of me was paralyzed.
Yep.
And every so often I'd be lying there, and I would feel like my nostril move a little bit, or my lip move a little bit. I'd feel some sort of sensation, and that was like a rainbow appearing in a storm, right? And you go, fuck, okay, hold on a second. But the most important thing that I want to tie here and then get back to you, for I want listeners to understand this, is I stayed angry at what had happened. And I was bitter, and I was frustrated at how it impacted my business, my opportunities, and I canceled shit because I just, I couldn't talk. I was embarrassed at how I looked, all sorts of shit that I never thought I would feel those things. And then I started thinking about, what if this needed to happen to slow me down? What can I learn from this? And it changed. It jacked up my nervous system so much that I discovered intentional breathing and all sorts of breathing practices, and really started understanding that my aerobic capacity was insane. I was like, at 57 years old, 58 years old, I'm doing stuff with like guys in special operations drills, and they're out of breath and I'm not, but it was specific to the system that they brought me in to teach them.
Right.
But my parasympathetic breathing was horrible. I couldn't do. And so it led me to my buddy, Brian McKenzie's a good friend of mine. It led me to, Wim Hof, Belisa Vranich, like 3 or 4 different people. And suddenly I'm meditating 2 times a day. I'm breathing properly. And I'm telling myself, if this happened to teach you something about life, about being a workaholic, about not stopping, about work-life balance, and so I want to, share that. I wanted to share that with you and everyone else to realize that is literally, as psychobabble as it sounds, it's the choiceless choice that you need to, using your terminology, you got to lean into it when and it's the stoic. It's like Ryan Holiday's, the title of his book, right? The obstacle's the way. And it wasn't until I said, okay, if this is how I'm going to look and talk the rest of my life, then this is it. So now what do I do with this? And it was only then that things started to, like you started to get your sensation, that I started to get some, and it's been 2 years and it's still coming back. But anyways.
And that's perfect. I mean, I absolutely, that's a great parallel, because I wanted so badly to walk, to use my hands again. Like you said, as a soldier, going from being able to run 25 miles with 100 pounds on your back and full gear, full kit, -20 degrees in the snow, gas mask, this upper echelon soldier, having that be your identity and not even be able to use a bedpan on your own.
Right.
Like that's a whole other level. But you're so right. I wanted to walk so badly, but I knew I couldn't at that point. So just like you said, I was like, well, I'm going to have to make peace with this. If this is what I got, because it's one thing to know that you're going to die, or to be willing to die for your job or your family or your country. But to know that you're 40 years old and you have probably another 40 or 50 years of your life that you will be in a bed paralyzed is a fate worse than death.
Mm.
And that's where just like you said, I'm just trying to get a coping mechanism. How can I just get through this morning? And for me, that was about just trying to change that mental framing. And by taking that one peg and taking care of it, it became the thing that made everything else, like you said, start to come together. But I never would have seen that missing piece.
Right.
I never would have seen my hubris, or I never would have seen my drive. I never would have seen all these things that I'd taken for granted that allowed me to take those steps to get to that place.
Were you an angry person before this happened?
I wasn't. I wasn't angry when I was younger. As I got into high school, I started getting a little bit more angry as life kind of piles shit on top of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the passive aggressive angry guy. So I was the cantankerous smart ass guy.
Right.
And that kind of served me as a bartender and things like that. But then when you got into the military, like everybody there is everybody thinks that they're a badass. Everybody thinks that they're an alpha. And you really start to figure out what you're made of, all the way around. And that's when you start with adversity. It doesn't show you it doesn't tell you what you are. It just reveals what you're not. It strips away all the bullshit. And so it knocked me down to brass tacks. And you had a post a few weeks ago where you were talking about how when you first moved to California and those 2 guys jumped you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And remember how it was like, that was your gift of adversity, because if those guys hadn't jumped you, think of how many people whose lives would not have been impacted by your teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Think of how many people may have been killed. Think of law enforcement, military, just self-defense people, weaponizing the flinch, this idea of understanding these things, taking a no bullshit attitude and just saying, this is what happens. I don't care where you are in the world, what your religious belief is, or what your populace is. You scare somebody, they do this. If you hadn't have done those things, we wouldn't be talking here. But also, like I said, imagine where martial arts, like true self-defense, would be if you hadn't had that happen to you.
That was crazy when I read that, because no one had ever pointed that out. was interesting. I thought deeply about that, and had a couple of talks about that, because I was an avid skier, a competitive skier, um, teaching skiing, competing in skiing, downhill freestyle. And had I not gotten jumped, like if we visualize what could have been,
Yeah.
like you on the bed going, if this had happened in Afghanistan, what would be the ripple effect here? Um, I went, had that not happened, maybe I'd be, living in Switzerland selling skis, and,
Yeah.
um, so it was neat. I thank you for that, because it inspired a whole bunch of conversation, and when you look back at when you look back at life, the maximum cliche, you can only live it forward, but there's something magical when you look back at it and you go, oh, look at these pieces of the puzzle that led me to here. So for anyone just listening to this on radio, on the internet, how old am I? The
I'm there with you.
aliens have landed, folks. The Marcus is not lying in a bed talking to me from so let's move through. You started getting some fingers in your sensation in your fingers, started moving. What was the process, and how fast was it before you could, like, literally be helped out of bed and take a step?
It was a year before I was actually able to get to a place where I could start to learn to walk, occupational therapy, physical therapy. And then a year and a half before I was to the point where, because at that point, I still can't even hold like a pen, and that's what they were,
Right.
again, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I can move a little bit, but can I take care of myself? Right. Can I even wipe my own ass? Can I use keys can I cook dinner?
People don't realize, like, if you, depending on how your nerve was shut down, you're like born again. Those limbs are born again. You've got to retrain those nerves on all those exercises. It's not just because you remember how to do it.
Right.
It's not what people think.
It's not. And I don't want anybody to have to go through it, but what I would love for people to be able to do is kind of like what we're talking about, is if they can take those ideas and that concept so they don't have to go through it.
Right.
But the problem, though, Tony, is that, man, for most of us, we have to have something big kick us right in the face. We need life. We need adversity to grab you and shake you and say, is this what you really want?
Right.
To just shake you and wake you up, because most of us live a life of just like that quiet desperation of mediocrity.
Mm.
And I've had people that say, I've never been through what you've been through, and you don't have to. There's some adversity that's been like a 10 on your adversity scale for you, right? But for most people, they're doing just enough to get by. They're doing a little bit better than maybe their friends making. If their friends are making 50 grand, they're making 65 grand. They think they're a baller. They do. And they usually rely on the skill set that they already have, natural attributes, natural, just things, blessings they've been given physically. And they really lean on those things. And because of that, they never look for opportunities. They never try to get better. So it's like the classic guy that likes striking but doesn't like the ground, or the classic guy that likes jujitsu but doesn't want to kick, punch, or use a weapon or think about multiple opponents. The reality is, in life, it's just like martial arts. It's a big pie.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand that even if you're a master at one thing, you're only getting like a glimpse of a sliver of that. And there's so much more to it. And then that pie is 360, and then there's all these other dimensions. But the idea is to understand that adversity in this life is inevitable, period. So it's so important for us to have this mentality affixed to us now before we face something.
Mm-hmm.
And I even talk about micro adversities, like these small things that we choose to do, like a cold shower, Wim Hof breathing, sprints. It could be something as simple as taking the stairs instead of the escalator. But these are these small decisions that we make, and we condition our brain to start seeking those things out and using that as a litmus test or a compass, because for the most part, most of the things that we need in our life that we want are going to take dedication, and they're going to take some sort of hardship, and we have to willfully engage in those things to get to the next level. The path of least resistance doesn't really lead anywhere. And that's why the way I look at it is, in the end, you're only as strong as the adversity that you overcome.
Hmm.
And we have to start looking for those things in every part of our life, whether it be business, relationships, obviously physically, mentally, emotionally.
I remember having breakfast with a buddy of mine, and I was telling him, I got somebody ripping me off again, and I fucking hate that shit. I hate the stress. I'm gonna have to, call my lawyer and send the cease and desist letter. And his whole body language while I'm telling this, like he's sitting up and he's sort of smiling, and he goes, "Man, I fucking love suing people." I was like, "What?" And I said, "Why would you say that?" I said, "I fucking hate that stress." And he goes, he says, "Because it reminds me that I'm doing something so good that somebody's fucking ripping me off." And it was just like this reframe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of what you're talking about psychologically is that reframe, that if you can learn, if you grow up, if you're teaching your kids that adversity is a gift, and the obstacle is the way, and man's search for meaning is the metaphor. And people, I didn't, my parents didn't teach me that. And so anytime I didn't get my way, it was a problem, whether I was, a kid at a playground, or what do you mean I didn't get accepted into this school? Or what do you mean they didn't accept this offer? Or what do you mean this guy is ripping me off? Like that's not fair. And all it means, guys, and everyone listening to this, is if you start to train your brain in the right way, what you're doing is you're not changing the event, you're changing how long you're in denial about the event. And only when you accept what's happening, like in our system, we talk about the golden rules. Well, the number one golden rule is accept what's happening. Because while you're standing there, give a stupid example, you get a flat tire, you're on the way, you're always on the way somewhere if you got a flat tire, right? You never just, I was just driving, you're on your way somewhere, flat tire. How many of us jump out of the car and go, "Oh my God, I'm so excited. I have a flat tire. I haven't changed a flat in like 6-7 years. What a great opportunity to fucking refine and hone my tire changing skills," right? Nobody ever says that. But what does everybody do? You get out of the car, you're like, "Oh fuck, I don't believe this. I don't believe this is denial." Then you get out and you look at the car and it's like, "No fucking way. That's denial too." Then you stand there, you put your hands on your hips, you go, "Fuck," right? That's denial too. Meanwhile, a cascade of events are happening. Maybe you're not looking at oncoming traffic, or maybe you need to be on the phone calling this important meeting and saying, "Guys, I need you to find a way to stall for 45 minutes," or whatever it is. But you're not going to start thinking tactically until you're emotionally and psychologically in control of yourself. And so I love everything about your message. The idea, we don't, and there's, there'll be some contrarian out there who'll go, "Well, if I read your book, am I going to attract adversity?" Like the people that I've had people, I don't know if you ever had this in your martial art journey. People go, "Well, I don't want to learn self-defense because I don't want to attract violence." It's like, well, like, does, getting a first aid kit mean you're going to like cut yourself? Does buying a fire extinguisher mean you're going to start a fire in your house? So,
Yeah, I bet they have life insurance. I bet they have car insurance, right?
right. And I always joke for years, I would say, "Hey, life insurance is great, except you got to die to collect it. It's not very practical. I'm insured for so much, this much money." Well, okay. So how do you collect that, motherfucker? Right. But very, very cool. So listen, more, I want to hear more about the take, when you take us back to, you're now, like, things are starting to come together, and now you can move your hands. Now you could do it more than 5 reps. You're demoing it to people. You spend almost 2.5 years until you go, I can actually walk with a cane now, or a walker, or, holding onto railings. Did the idea for the book and the idea of sharing this experience and trying to inspire and empower others happen concurrently with that, where you went, "Man, this is like, everyone told me I'd never walk. I can't wait to share this story"? Or was it you track what I'm asking? Like, did you know, I need to complete this vision, because part of my master plan is I'm going to get out of this fucking bed, and then I'm going to get up on stage and tell people about it? Like sometimes when you have like such a clear vision of where it's going, that helps with the healing and the progression.
Yeah, I did have intentions of doing that, but I did what a lot of people do. Like I was saying, once I'm away from it, now it doesn't seem as powerful. Now it doesn't seem like it was so bad. And I
Mm.
just want to kind of put it behind me.
How many years ago
And
was this?
this was in 2012. So it's 9 years or 7 years ago.
Okay, cool.
So what happened was when I got out, like I went from 180 pounds, like as a soldier, to 230 pounds. My nervous system is, shot. And I can't go back to chiropractic school. I was in chiropractic school before because my neuropathy in my hands is so bad. I can't really feel anything. I still have it like from the middle of my forearm to my hands. So I
Mm.
can still do stuff. But if you ask me to like adjust somebody's spine or like work on your neck, there's no way I could do it because in my mind, it would be irresponsible to potentially hurt you if I
Sure.
can't do it the way I'm supposed to. Um, so I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I went back to my first love, which was martial arts. So trying to hold a blade or a stick or ball up a fist and throw a punch or throw a kick or be on the ground and do jujitsu, that was when my real physical therapy in my mind came back.
Mm.
And it reignited that all these philosophical ideals that came together. Um, I got a private student who was well off, and I would give him private lessons. We would go to lunch afterwards. And every time we would talk, just like we're talking now, he would talk about business or his family. And inevitably I could take something that we had just worked on in the lesson
Mm.
and tie it into what he was talking about.
Right.
And we did that for a couple of months. And then one day he's like, we had like a big aha moment, right? And the next time we met, like what we just talked about, it saved him a bunch of money. And he's like, I'm paying a coach a bunch of money a month to help me
Right.
with this stuff. And you're helping me more than he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so me being a smart ass, I was like, well, just write me a check, whatever you want to do.
Right.
And so he gets up. I think he goes to the restroom, but he goes out to his car. He calls his coach, and most coaches are going to want like a year or a 6-month commitment. He calls him up. He's like, I'm not going to renew with you. Gets a checkbook, comes in, writes a check for the amount that he'd been paying that guy for 6 months. He slides the check over for me. He's like, so how do you want to do this?
Hmm.
And I'm sort of flabbergasted. He's like, do you want to just do what we've been doing? I was like, yeah, and I'll give you the lessons for free. I'll chuck in those extra lessons. That was the beginning of my first client. He was very well off. He owned a lot of real estate. He had other friends that were in that tax bracket, referred me more people. They knew somebody that had a speaking event, which I didn't know that at that point. You and I are speakers, so we know now that there's certain expectations. They just said, can you come up and tell your story? Yeah. I do 30 minutes of a keynote. I do 30 minutes of Q&A. They write me a check. I'm like, I can't take that. They're like, you're the keynote, dumbass. This is what we
Right.
pay him. Just take it. And I started finally, like you said, realizing, wow, this looks like this is something that I could actually do to make impact on people. There was an older woman. I gave 2 or 3 other speaking events. There was an older woman at the very back during the Q&A that was kind of walking the back of the room, waiting for everybody to leave. So that we
Right.
know they want to come talk to you, right? And I talked to her, and I'm being present, and she says, I want to buy your book. Ma'am, I don't have a book. And she looks mad almost, or like she didn't believe me, and she like wags her finger at me, and she's like, how can you not have a book? Turns out her granddaughter was going through a divorce, was going through hardship. She's like, your message, your story is powerful. She's like, she needs to hear this. She's like, but I can't tell the way you told it. But if you had a book, I could just give it to her and she could put that stuff into play.
Nice.
So it's just like the evolution of anything, right? If you pay attention, if you listen, you'll figure out, or your market will tell you what they need.
Right.
But that was the hard part for me, because now I have to go back and revisit all that. Now it's cathartic. Now it's a year and a half of just going through and again, having to look at myself. I call this rational lies.
Mm-hmm.
People they'll rationalize things, but what they're doing is they're giving their self a rational lie that they can believe.
Right.
So I was rationalizing what had happened to myself, and I just acted like it wasn't going to happen, or acted like it didn't happen to avoid it. But by looking at it and trying to get all the wisdom out of it, it made me really go back and visit that stuff. But I needed it. And it helped me immensely. And then it's just like when we write with anything, if you've never written a book before or created a course or done a keynote before, you want to put everything into one thing, but you can't do it. You can't write a 5,000 page book and just put it out there. So I'm doing kind of the way we are here. Okay, listen, what's the most powerful stuff? I'm going to put that in there. What's a powerful example of that? I'm going to put that in here. And so luckily, for better or for worse, I had an interesting life, had some plenty of experiences that kind of, and again, we're both mutual, so much respect and love for Bruce Lee and his martial art, that idea of absorbing what is useful, discarding what is useless, and what is specifically our own. And I kind of had that common thread going through the whole thing. And it's just kind of the way that I was able to get through it. And halfway through my book, I'm offered my TEDx talk. And, it was almost perfect timing, because by the time you do your TEDx and they edit it and put it all out there, it takes them 3 to 4 months to get it done. So I just put the pedal down to finish the book, launch it around the time my TEDx comes out. And then that's what kind of put me on the map and really gave me the opportunity to start. And here's where it's important now. Just like with a course or just like when you're teaching a class, we have this idea and we're really honest and we think this is something powerful, but we don't know. We have to throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. We have to see, do people even know what I'm talking about? What is this idea? And at first, half the people didn't like it. If you say adversity is a gift, half the people are going to look at you cross-eyed. They're going to be like, what?
Right.
But the people that do get it, they self-select. So just like with what we're talking about near, no fear, KNOW, to no fear. It's not like there's not fear. Fear is everywhere. If you don't feel fear, you're an idiot. But you have to learn, just like with adversity, you have to look at it and say, I'm not afraid of you, or at least I'm able to put you over here so that I can go through and do what I need to do, because my only chance to survive is to embrace that, to push it. So adversity shows up unannounced at the most inopportune times without apology. Adversity doesn't care less about what you want. It doesn't give a damn about your feelings. And it doesn't take no for an answer. It hates one part of us. It doesn't hate all of us. It just hates the weakness in us. And that's what we have to be willing to do at the time. So if I'm throwing a punch and I drop my hand and you're my coach, your job is not to just say you're dropping your hand, it's to smack me in the face. That's where adversity comes in. That's where I'm learning. Pain and discomfort are the best teachers. And for what's happened with you and I, these lessons are very, very deep and they will never go away. So if we can give even an iota of this to other people and they can actually start to act on it and put it into any part of their life, whether it be a relationship, self-defense, business, it's going to behoove them and their ROI is going to be huge.
No, I agree. And it was interesting as you're saying that, you're on such an elegant flow. I didn't want to interrupt, but adversity and fear are, part of the same, molecular structure. They don't exist independent. If you get a fear spike, it's because you're about to have some adverse experience. If it's real, sometimes we manufacture it or we imagine it and get the fear spike, but still the movie that starts in your brain before you can reconcile or figure out, I'm home alone and I hear some rattling at my door, for an hour, I'm thinking I'm about to get murdered. I'm hiding in my house. And then I realize it's the wind and it's a tree until I go check it out. But I've already jacked up my nervous system. I've already started the murder movie that I'm the lead victim in, right, instead of the hero. So this is all stuff that we talk about. It's an interesting serendipitous connection that I would argue in terms of neurological impulse, that the fear spike precedes the moment of adversity. All victims of violence who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the attack. So it's like something's wrong. Okay, bad shit happened. That bad shit becomes the adversity. In the moment, let's say you're being attacked, somebody's trying to take over your company, you get served with papers, you get a letter from a lawyer, your physiology changes. That's the fear spike. You open it up and then somebody says, hey, there's a mistake here and here's $1 million check. Someone's supposed to, you're like, whoa, I thought I was about to get sued, but you're probably getting sued, right? The first example is, but what I'm saying is the fear spike happens before we uncover what the fuck's going on? What the fuck's going on? It's almost like there's a nice handoff between my life's work and and your, I don't want to say life's work because it's just the last 10 years, but the most important work of your life
Agree.
is this gifted I love it because it's a you know, we can listen, you know, I bought my whole team Holidays book, you know, The Obstacle's the Way. And a couple of years ago at our combatives camp in Vegas. And if you are available this year, we'll talk about it offline, but I'd love to invite you out there and feel free to talk to 100 people and stuff. But we'll talk about that offline. But as a martial artist and with your story, I think it's impactful and it dovetails so deeply. I didn't realize this until like 5 minutes ago. This connection between the whole no fear and anything bad. It's the fear loop in our cycle of behavior. But it's fascinating and it's interesting. But the thing about the Stoic mindset is you read it and you go, that's so cool. Like, you know, Marcus Aurelius said this and so-and-so said this, but it's stuff that you're never going to meet this person. You're never going to connect to that. You don't carry a sword. You're not, you know, in a jousting fight. You're not worrying about the plague, you know. So what's nice and important is you're a contemporary and the shit happened to you like real recent, you know, and so people can learn from that. And I think it's a very important message. So you did the TED Talks, the book came out, and now you're doing talks all over. You're doing, and we come full circle because I think I started off a little bit making fun of all the online coaches and masterminds and people, and you know, and it's tricky because it's almost like I wanted to start one for a long time, but I was so embarrassed by like almost grouping myself in with all of this shit. But then I sat there and went, you know, I've been teaching for 43 years. I've been, you know, doing combatives, martial arts, force on force since I'm 7. So for 52 years, I've been, you know, doing something in the under the martial art umbrella. I've grown a business to multi-million dollars, had it stolen from me, rebuilt it again. You know, I could probably share an idea or two about fear and business and management, you know, which brings me to, you know, one of the reasons I think we have a lot of mutual respect for each other is you could have written this book without having gone through it. The gift of adversity is a great message, right? You could have said, you know, I had a shitty life and I turned it around and now I'm a performance coach. But all of the, without the backstory, all of the messages you share are legit. You understand what I mean? Is like, but the fact that this was born out of true adversity, you know, it's like you said, it's like, okay, I might spend 40, 50 years in this fucking room on this bed. I can't figure out how to kill myself. So how am I going to live? It's fucking heavy, man. It's amazing. It's an amazing story. How I'm trying to think of a way to I mean, the reality is that like everyone's got to read your book to get the insight. And if you're, you know, the expression, if the student's ready, the master or teacher appears. So you may be dealing with something in your life, relationship issue, business issue, career change, you know, and the book may be enough. There might be an insight in there, you know, in there. But how do people learn more? You know, most of us probably couldn't afford you as a personal coach. What are the ways you reach out, knowing how important this stuff is? What are the different things that now you as a company are doing to help people?
Yeah, I'm speaking a lot. I'll do workshop at places. And then I'm just like you are. For a long time, I was resistant to doing like a digital product or doing some sort of course. But I'm realizing now, just like you were saying, there's so many people that are out there that are disseminating so much false information
Hmm.
that's literally detrimental to people. And it pisses me off. And what are they doing? They're talking about martial arts. They're doing the real thing. They're doing what really happens. Or the same thing like with what I'm doing. So I'm in the process of creating, digital products, speaking more often. I'll do coaching for executives and for their companies specifically, but I'm in the process of, creating more groups. That way I can have more impact with the people. And reading it in a book or hearing you speak is fine. But the biggest compliment you could give me or Tony is to take what we're talking about today and fucking do it.
Hmm.
To don't, I mean, yeah, you can reach out to me on social, you can go to my website, whatever. And if it makes you feel good, I appreciate that. But frankly, the people that come up and shake your hand after you've spoken are under the influence. They're excited, right? They're excited for about an hour. Then they leave. And then come Monday morning, they're on social media complaining about Monday, how the weekend went by so fast, or how they can't wait for Friday. And they're not taking what we're telling them and putting it into play. So the best compliment you could give Tony or I is to not even reach out to us, but to just start implementing this in some small way. If you decide to not drink coffee from, if you normally have coffee at 8 o'clock and you decide I'm going to do a micro adversity and wait till 8:30 just to show that I'm not made out of fucking porcelain and I can drink coffee at 8:30 and still survive. Holy shit. That's the best thing you could do, right? If you can decide that you're going to actually go for a walk, even though you've intended to, but you haven't. Again, for me, the physicality is big because there's still a fear in me that I'm still trying to work through, that I never want to go back to that place again.
Right.
Right. And, I could lie and say, oh, I feel, that's not going to happen, but there's still that part of me. So now I always try to push myself as physically as much as I can in a controlled manner to protect myself, because I know how quickly it can go away. And so because of that, I hope you have urgency. If you're listening to us right now and you aren't sure if this is making an impact on you, hear me now. If you woke up tomorrow, paralyzed from the neck down, what would you wish you would have accomplished with your life?
That's heavy, man. That's fucking heavy. And so the gift, if you're the gift of that sentence there is, I make this joke. I go like, time is the only thing that we can't regenerate. And when you waste time, it's like mugging yourself. Right. And visualize that. Like, yeah, like I got mugged 700 times last week. What, like 700 times I sat on my ass, didn't do this when I could have done that. And it's tricky. You also don't want to, I've seen it go the other way, Marcus, where people become obsessed with what's the word? I was just listening to it in an audiobook today. Where ambition starts to bleed into greed or ego or power broking, and now you're fucking up lives because. And so, when you hear Marcus say, like, what do you really want to accomplish in your life? He's not talking about fucking up your life to accomplish a particular goal. You've got to find, and it's used too much that it almost doesn't have the impact or traction now, but that work-life balance. You got to find whatever that is or whatever expression. Do you get into that? I mean, obviously you get into that, but do you use that language or do you use something else?
I just call it, for most people, if they chase balance, they can never achieve it simply because they're trying so hard. So what I talk to them about is just blend.
Right.
And I'll talk about things where they can look at, like 5 circles or buckets or pillars where they're looking at their personal life, looking at business, looking at their physicality, their financing, and then like their spirituality components. And if you look at those 5, buckets, you can usually figure out, like, if you do it every week, you might be like, all right, well, I'm crushing it in business, but I haven't talked to my wife all week and my kids hate me.
Right.
It's like, okay. Darwin says, they always say, he's misquoted. They always say he talks about the battle of the fittest, but it's not. He actually says the species that is able to adapt is the one that is most readily available to survive. So it's about blend. It's being able to adapt.
That's a
So
good
even, yeah, and that's the way I try to look at it, because if people chase balance, they're constantly trying to get in this one
yeah.
spot, and it fucks them up.
That's interesting because I will there's times when I have to work for 3 days straight,
Yep.
and it can't be, oh no, like I scheduled a workout here, meditation here, read a book here, go for a walk with my wife here. And when you lay that out, you go, wow, that's so beautiful, that'd be nice if I could do that. But like real life happens, and I think it's an interesting thing what you said there, because I will, when I have to take a day off, like I really think self-awareness is the most important thing that we can cultivate.
Oh yeah.
And so I know I need to recharge, I need to step away. I know, and I get that, and that comes with age and experience, folks. So but you may be working for someone else, and you got a good boss or a prick boss, and you've got your wife or your husband putting demands on you, and your kids are on you. The reality is you still can't say, I'm going to take my kids to school every day and never miss that. You can try that, but if you start with, coming back to the title of the book, The Gift of Diversity, how am I going to handle these challenges and make the most of it, and do, and the other thing is to be able to communicate it properly to yourself or the people around you. That's huge.
That's exactly it. Well, and just like you were saying with business, it's in life, it's a marathon and it's a sprint. It's a marathon of sprints. So like you're talking about, you and I were on the road, or we're training, or we're doing whatever. There are times, like you said, where you may be just killing yourself for 3 days to hit this deadline or to launch whatever this is. But that doesn't mean that you do it every single day. That means that you give yourself that downtime, like you said, the self-awareness. Even if you don't feel run down yet, you're like, you know what? I know that this is going to lead to burnout if I don't take my foot off the gas. And for a lot of people, probably even you and I, it's easier for us to put our foot on the gas than it is to pump the brake, because that's our default, is to push harder. So even within that, the adversity is to take a second, to take a breath, give yourself maybe a little bit extra time, give the same empathy that you say that you have for other people. How about you give that to yourself once in a while?
Yeah, I dig that. Do you have a morning routine, a ritual? Do you have a daily ritual, and can you share it?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with rituals is, it sounds great, but a lot of people think that you have to do it for 2 hours, like Tony Robbins or, Tim Ferriss. And I love and respect those guys, but most people are like, I don't have that time. I don't have that luxury.
Right.
So I do it like in a 15-minute version, then I do like an hour version, and then a 2-hour version. But the idea is you get up, and when you get up, you get out of bed as soon as I'm not hitting snooze, I'm getting up,
right,
get out. And then I go into another room, because if I lay in bed and try to use gratitude, I'll fall back asleep, and I'm not going to lie to myself. Right. So I go into another room, I sit down, and I just try to be present, and I think about meditation, or I think about what I'm grateful for. If I have all the time that I need, like if I have an hour, I'll take about 20 minutes to meditate, gratitude, visualize what I want to get done, then get up, go work out, move my body somehow, lifting, running, outside. If you're outside in the sun a little bit, it helps. It gets that circadian rhythm where it should be. It wakes you up. And then, I fast. I don't eat breakfast. I usually do about a 16-hour fast. There's some days I do 5-day fast, but most of the time 16 hours is my fasting time. And I get back, get a cold shower, start with the cold shower, about 5 minutes of that, go into a warm shower. In the cold shower, I'm doing Wim Hof breathing. Something else I have my clients do is I'm visualizing the things that I really want to happen, like in this near term. Because if you're in the cold shower and you're doing the Wim Hof breathing, you're coming through with that, and you can visualize that. Now this hardship that you're facing, you can actually go through and attach that negativity, that adversity, to the notion that that's what's necessary for you to get to this place of this thing you're trying to visualize. So you start to connect those two things about the hard work leading to this thing that you want to happen. I get up, get dressed, get ready to go. I usually wear, something pretty casual. And then if I have calls, I get on my Zoom calls. I do that. If I'm doing interviews, I'm doing that for my podcast or for somebody else's. And then if I'm traveling or if I'm teaching somewhere, get my ass on the plane and get ready to go.
I dig it, man. I like that. I like that. Is there one, when people ask me, whether it's a private lesson, whether it's a podcast, they go, what's the one thing you can leave, the people are like, what's the magic pill? And I'm like, but, I always tell people it's changing a relationship with fear, that if you change your relationship with fear, you change your life. And it doesn't mean you eliminate fear. It just means you just embrace it. You go, oh fuck, that sucked. I'm scared. What am I scared? Like, and now I got to research this.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that you've been asked a similar question, 1,000 times, but is there one thing that you would want to share or leave? And you kind of said it like 15 minutes ago, is like, get your fucking ass in gear. Don't waste today. But is there one thought that's kind of a common thread at all your talks or all your lessons? And if we haven't talked about it, would you share that, please?
Yeah, of course. And you touched on all those things, seeing adversity, being able to do the cognitive reframe, looking at those other things that you can get done. But one that I think that people kind of face is this. I've had a lot of people that will say, well, I'm doing this, and then they have these excuses, right? And the reality is, for most of us, if I put a gun to your head right now and said, okay, what should you really be working on? You probably know what it is, right? And so for most people, the answer that they seek is hidden in the adversity that they are trying to avoid.
Wow. Say that again. It's great.
So yeah, like if you're facing something with business and you're like, oh, I'm having trouble with my business, but this and this, the answer that you seek is in the hardship from the adversity that you're trying to avoid. So if you can't get clients, the adversity is you don't want to go out and knock on doors or make cold calls or send some emails. So guess what? You're going to be stuck right there. So you're in denial, right? But if you just go through and start figuring it out and you're like, oh, but the software is too hard, or I don't know where to get leads. As you start doing the work, eventually, as if by magic, a little path starts to come forward or a glimmer of light. And now you kind of follow in that direction. The reality is, where I am now and where Tony is, especially with this huge empire he's created, he didn't think that when he was getting beat up by those guys when he was 11. He had no clue. He just knew that there was this direction he needed to go to get to this next place. So all the stuff that you want in your life, if you just move forward with that intention, understand that adversity is inevitable, understand that hard work is part of it, and then actually protect yourself in the process, mentally, emotionally, and physically, you can accomplish just about anything that you want. But if you just stay there in that place and you just continue to wallow in it and continue to have the victim mindset and you corroborate your own beliefs, and now you go through and you find other people that will continue to encourage your behavior, most people play the victim so well that they should walk around with their own body chalk. That's just how it is.
That's great. I love that. I want to wrap on that. I will post links and show notes and stuff like that to our stuff. But while people are listening, what's the best way to find out about you?
Yeah, they can just go to my website, marcusaureliusanderson.com. It's my name. If you reach out to me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, any of that stuff. Those are ways you can get a hold of me. I'm on, Facebook and Twitter as well. But yeah, that's it.
Dude, this was great. Very fascinating, amazing story, and a simple but profound message.
As you know, it has to be simple, because in the heat of battle, all that shit goes away. If it's not simple, it falls apart.
That's right.
It has to be dirt simple.
I dig it, man. Okay, man, be safe. And I'll hit you up offline to discuss how do we get you to the camp.
Absolutely, brother.
Okay. Speak to you soon.